Deep Dive Film School makes no claim of ownership of the film footage used in this episode. The film footage is owned entirely by the copyright holders. Also, we're going to spoil the hell out of this movie, so this is your warning. Welcome to Deep Dive Film School!
Oh, this week we got a forgotten gem and an extension to our stand-up film festival with 1988's Punchline.
Let's dive on in. Alright everybody, I am Adam Sherlock.
And I'm Adam Pulcher.
And if you like what you see /hear, please like and subscribe. You can find us in all the spaces and places that people what?
Find good media.
That is right.
That's right. Follow us on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. Those are our most active channels, so please join us there.
Yep.
All right, a little bonus episode. This is forgotten gem for you. I hadn't seen this movie before.
Yeah.
Surprisingly, I don't know why or how I missed this movie. It seems very down my alley, and you know, it has pretty big stars in the prime here.
I think that's one of the interesting things. This was one, and I think I may have mentioned it on the show, that like, you know, if you were a child of the 80s, your family had a handful of sometimes odd seeming movies on VHS. So then you've just seen them like ubiquitously throughout your childhood a bunch of times.
Sure.
Punchline was one of those in my household. I think my mom really liked it. And, you know, you're right. It does have a lot of pretty big stars in it. And what's interesting is going back and reading old reviews from 88 when this came out. It's really funny to realize in how many different ways this movie is ahead of its time, because a lot of the reviews said, "Oh, the main critique is like, this movie doesn't know if it wants to be a comedy or a drama," and it's like, well, that's what we do nowadays all the time. Like, that's not really a critique in that same way. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that it's like, well, it's called Punchline and it's about comedians, but it's not very funny. It's you know, some of it's kind of sad, and it's like,
sure,
yeah, that's how movies work. Like it's sort of a weird. So I think that maybe is why it didn't do really well, or kind of got swept under the rug a little bit.
I could see some of that criticism there. You know, the director, written and directed by David Seltzer. I don't know if you could have a more like close your eyes and throw a dart of things that he did. Dude. So he has the Michael Douglas drama shining through.
Right.
He made the football movie Lucas with what's his the like made for TV the tiny little football player. I forgot who the main character is. He wrote The Omen.
I know.
What the hell?
He
like wrote it twice.
Yeah, he wrote like the movie and then the sequel and then like produced them. Yeah.
And then Bird on a Wire, the Mel
Gibson comedy with Goldie
Hawn from the 90s. You're just like,
some guys just work in the field, man.
Good for you. It's just what a weird filmography.
It's very strange.
So, and then he did this movie all on his own too. And yeah, this first time seeing it. Tom Hanks, Sally Field, a couple other people like John Goodman was super young here, probably before Roseanne or about early. Roseanne.
Maybe early Roseanne.
Damon Wayans is in this for a little bit. Mark Rydell, a few other like people that you're like, oh, that guy.
Yeah.
You know,
very 80s again in that same way.
For sure. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. So tell me a bit about like why you chose this movie, why you think it's a forgotten gem.
I think that when we first started talking about doing the stand-up festival, I was just thinking about how this movie seemed really to, in a pretty early era, explore the idea that someone who is a comedian, like, that could be really good at it, is potentially in a position where their life is fucking falling apart. Like, it seems like it's a narrative that we know so well now.
Very possible.
Yeah. Like, we know that now, and like that's a lot of what people talk about, but I'd never seen a movie that had done this before. And it is a really early eclectic performance from Tom Hanks, where you're like, this is like in his era of Big, right? Where it's like he's trying to transition over into drama.
He's got Splash, Bachelor Party, like he's in that era. Turner and Hooch, maybe.
Yeah, I think that's maybe a little bit later. Yeah. But here it's like, and I love when he references Funny Steve as this like character that he plays, and you're like, when he's like, well, if you're gonna make me a star, you better do it soon, because Funny Steve is going down. You know,
true. And he's struggling a lot through this movie, and it's rarely because of his stand up. Right?
Yeah.
It's rarely because he bombed on stage or
Yeah.
like he's past the point of kind of being the guy who's working on stuff.
Yep.
He's the guy who he's headlining. He's got the crowd's attention,
And he can just get up there and just riff
yeah,
if he wants
and
to.
that's what he most of these people end up having to do in this whole festival that we end up seeing is like, okay, yeah, you go up there and tell jokes, and there's this brilliant opening scene where Sally Field is like, it's like a drug deal where she's buying drugs, like she's buying jokes for $500,
Yeah.
and the guy won't show her
He
everything.
won't give her a sample, right? Like
he gives her the joke but not the punchline.
Yeah.
And stuff like that. I married a Polish guy, whatever, like, and so you have this contrast of these two different comedians, where she's kind of this homemaker from Jersey who just like she feels natural up there, but we also
he's kind of maybe going through a midlife crisis.
Oh, totally is. Yeah, for sure. Which is fine. Yeah, that's totally fine. And then you get the mixed match of kind of the hot comedians and I think it's the gas station.
Yeah, the gas station
and everything. And it's a super charming, fun movie. And again, I'm really surprised I hadn't seen it. I do have some issues with it. I wish it was like 30 minutes shorter. There's no reason for it to be over 2 hours.
No, totally.
I really, I love their relationship, but it really, when it started to become sexual, or that was the hook, or that was his like motivation, it really lost me after that point. Because it would have been so much better if he was just a mentor to her, and there wasn't kind of that 80s American dirty, like, oh, hey, I'm a horny guy, of course I'm gonna try and kiss you or sleep with you, when there's not really any reason for it. It doesn't go anywhere. It never really amounts to anything. And it just didn't seem earned at all, just because he's kind of an asshole because he's broke all the time and can't catch a break.
Yeah.
Even though he's an obviously smart person, he's at the beginning of the movie, he's in med school, like, and he's obviously very smart.
Although he fails out of it.
He does, but like that's why he can't become a big comedian, because he is kind of an asshole and people don't really want to deal with him or whatever. But like, outside of those faults of the movie, this was actually a really fun, entertaining movie. I wasn't really sure what to expect.
Yeah.
I was kind of going into it because obviously I know these actors. Why haven't I seen this movie?
Yeah.
And it's from an era where I was, watching a lot of movies and stuff like that, but probably rated R, maybe a little ahead of my time.
Yeah.
In '88 or whatever. So, but I'm glad we watched it, and I was just, it was mostly what I thought it was going to be.
Right. I think that it's really interesting to hear you say that about the sort of sexual component, which really doesn't go any further than a kiss. But
yeah.
I think why I like that in there is because it's unearned and makes you uncomfortable, because to me, that's the only way that Steven knows. Like, he doesn't know how just to have a friend.
But wouldn't it be better if he realized that about himself, that he is more than that, and he just mentored her and went on, like, because he takes her to the Queen's Hospital, and that's like one of the greatest scenes in the movie, where he's just cracking up all these sick people and doctors and nurses who are on a double shift or whatever. And it's like, first off, why is this a venue? But whatever, okay.
It was like a Make-A-Wish thing or something.
But it's just like, at first he's so desperate, he wants to try and sell her jokes because he found out that she wants to buy some.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'll do that.
Yeah,
And then he
money.
actually starts doing it for her for free.
Yeah.
And is really good at it, has good advice, and forces her to become uncomfortable, which is what you have to do as a creative person, especially a comedian who is bombed and has just told Polish jokes for the last
these like Henny Youngman joke with a real distinct punchline. And I think that I agree, I like the mentorship there. I think that, again, to my perspective, it's more that she has to tell him that's not what this is, than for him to realize it himself. And I think by the end of the movie, he does realize that after the contest and everything that happens there. But I agree that it feels really awkward and it doesn't make sense. And to me, again, having seen this movie so many times, that always just really tracked as like, he's this immature kid, and she's like, you don't know how to do anything else. Like, this is why you keep fucking things up, because like, you don't know how to just like have a friend and not have some other thing attached to it, right? Because he
Yeah.
just eats people up, like, and that's why he's like sleeping on couches all the time, and like even the waitress at the gas station is like, oh yeah, no, I know Steve. You know, it's like he slept with every girl there, like, you know, he just kind of uses people in that way, and by the end, he's learned something valuable because of a sacrifice that she makes, and I think that is why a lot of these moments work, even though they might feel a little forced. I think that I agree. I think that I would have loved a little more nuance in John Goodman's character to turn into liking what it is that she does. I think that his switch over is a little too quick. And so I agree, there's elements in this that are imperfect. But I love so much these scenes at the gas station, getting to know all these different comics, and really realizing like the movie has a really interesting narrative about why all the different people are there doing comedy, because they're not all there for the same reasons, right?
Yeah, no, I think this does a really great job of kind of showing the day-to-day of what it takes to be a comic, as opposed to some of these other movies that really maybe leaned into their relationships more, or their depression or whatever more. Where this, there's definitely some depressive stuff, but her biggest thing is that she married a Polish guy, and he wants the traditional, he wants a wife, he wants dinner on the table kind of guy, you know?
And he doesn't understand why she's doing this. He's confused,
but at the same time, and we never see this, but like, they've had a compromise and he's letting her do this, and it's a letting her thing. At the same time, like, he's like, well, I need you to cook dinner for me, but like, like asking for support right after you're telling her you can't support her, and stuff like that. But it was fun to see John Goodman so young here.
Yeah, totally.
And he was kind of a nice surprise. And like, I always believed John Goodman. So like, I kind of hope that moment was coming.
Yeah.
Where he like wanted to see that. Cause we've said this in other movies where like, I think it was Birbigula's movie, the Sleepwalk with Me. It was like his girlfriend through the whole movie is like never saw his act. And I'm just like, show him your act. Show him why you want to do this.
Why wouldn't you be more curious? Yeah, totally. Well, and I think that you're right. And that's a beautiful moment is in the beginning, he never seemed, and you're right, you do just believe John Goodman, and like he never seems like a full out bully. No. He just is confused, and he doesn't, and it's impeding upon what he thought that he had signed up for. But then once he sees her act, and he's like, once it's good, right? And he's like, oh my God, you're good. Like, you're really good. And their kind of happy ending there is him saying, you should do this story and you should do that story. And it's her realizing like, and this is another thing I think is really weird is we saw it a little bit in The Big Sick, mainly with his one-man show. But I was really surprised that we don't have more, that there weren't more of what I thought would be a really big trope in stand-up or in movies about comedians, which is talk about your real life. That's what makes you funny.
Yeah.
Because that feels really
obvious.
It feels really obvious. But for some reason, we don't have that a lot in any of these movies except for Punchline.
It's true, but it's like, right, what you know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, the scene where he takes her to a club and she's like, I'm not supposed to use any of my jokes tonight, so I guess here we go.
Yep.
Like, sir, what do you do? And
does some crowd work.
Does some crowd work, and she becomes pretty good at it, And I've never saw Sally Field and thought, stand-up comedian.
No, at all, yeah.
Which is why this is such a good casting, I think, because she does kind of play this, I don't want to say schlubby, like just this New Jersey housewife. And she isn't that funny, kind of
pretty nervous
traditionally, but like she gets into it, and it ends up being more about you, and that's really what you learn about. But like, again, that's why you the first movie you're ever going to write, have it be a personal experience, right? Or have it be something you went through.
That's how you get
that
your
you
chops.
Identify with.
Let's talk for a second about some of our characters at the gas station. We have the cross-dressing nun, the guy who's the singing nun. Damon Wayans, again, you said very young.
Pretty much being himself.
Yep. Taylor Negron, who has the world's most nonplussed face of all time. I just love, every time I see him in anything, I'm just like, he has the bitchiest face on the planet.
He does. I always think of Last Boy Scout.
Yes, I think of Last Boy Scout, and then I think of him as the pizza guy in Fast Times at
Yes,
Richmond
that's the
High.
other one. That's it.
And then we got the Puerto Rican guy with the boombox, and then you have that poor bastard history teacher,
Oh, yeah.
who just cannot get a laugh,
Getting
right?
tomatoes thrown at him.
Do you have pictures of your naked? Do you have pictures of your wife naked? He's like, oh, I'm so sorry. Never mind. And then of course we have old Billy, who's just the saddest. Like he always does that. Think of tonight and smile song,
Yeah.
a very vaudevillian era kind of. And old Billy is interesting because he's sort
Time
of
has passed him by.
well, and he sort of represents the sort of the specter of failure to all these younger comics of like, if you don't make it out, if you don't get a spot on the Carson show or whatever, this is what you have to look forward to. You're going to still be here doing that. And it's very sad, but it's also very like, I don't know, that part does feel kind of timeless.
The movie does really lean into the sacrifice of being funny, right? Like the work you have to put in, like you have to do this every day. You have to play the hospitals. You have to go here for $5 or whatever. And I think the other movies in this festival kind of did that, but not to the degree that this does, I don't think. And it was fun because you know, she's kind of living two lives, you know, and that's where he maybe goes astray, is because he ends up wanting to be this doctor, wanting to be what his parents or what his dad wanted him to be, but this is all he has now. And so he has one thing, and it's actually more healthy for her to have, you know, the home life. I'm glad we ended up going to her home life. They very easily could have not done that.
Yeah, just stayed in the gas station.
Yeah, just stayed in there, and that could have been still a good movie. But I was wondering if they're going to go there or not. And the fact that her husband was John Goodman made it worth it. And having that struggle at home, and she has I mean, essentially, I think Robin Williams stole this moment from Mrs. Doubtfire from Punchline,
with all the food,
where she's like putting on a dress and cooking food that she picked up, and there's a Mrs. Doubtfire.
The little kids are running and helping, and like, hey, go along and throwing the bread.
Just a reminder, Robin Williams' wife in Mrs. Doubtfire is Sally Fields. So just putting that together.
What the yeah, it is. Oh my god, totally. I know. I totally didn't think about that, but you're right. And there is kind of like
her boobs didn't catch on fire.
Her boobs didn't catch on fire, but and also I think there's a similar shtick in Mr. Mom too. But like I love that kind of like whoa, like you know, it just
no. There's some great moments like. What did one cocksucker say to the other? Like with the priest in the scene, like there's some awesome funny moments in the comedy. Like Tom Hanks is really funny. I mean, like he's just being like his everyman Tom Hanks in this movie.
Yeah,
kind of.
the bombastic,
he's a little
loud,
darker. Like they're the sad scene where he breaks down, like
because his dad's in the audience.
Yeah, that wasn't what I was not expecting that scene.
Yeah,
and it made you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. There's a couple of those. Well, and then he does kind of the same thing at the very beginning, you know, when they, I love these interactions with, I can't think of the actress's name, who's the agent. She was also in Brazil. She's great. I don't know why she didn't do more stuff, but, and, you know, it goes from, oh, well, we're going to send somebody out to watch Steve perform to, oh, well, we're going to hold a contest. And he's pretty burned by that. Like, the fuck, you said that you were looking at me and now you're doing this other thing.
He had this like glimmer of hope from that lady.
Yeah. And then it turns into this other thing, and you know, he you can tell for a minute there he's going to try to sleep with her too. Like that's sort of his MO. But you know, it turns into this contest, and you can tell right from the beginning he feels pretty burned. And he does this great thing where like everybody else is downstairs wringing their hands, working on their bits, like getting ready for this contest. And he's outside with the bullhorn, just being an asshole and like entertaining the people that are standing out there. And you're like, yeah, he's kind of by that stage, he's fatalistic. And when he takes the stage, he starts by insulting all the judges. Right. And it takes you a minute. You're like, is he going to just blow himself up on stage?
I mean, that's what it looks like.
And then he pivots, but you're like, it still is very angry. It's much angrier than anything that you've seen him do previously.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You know, like, I think that was the point where, you know, and I don't think I realized that was his dad in the audience.
Yeah.
I thought it was the guy who interviewed him at the beginning of the movie, the doctor who like happened to be there, or what maybe
No, it was his dad,
It's
and I
his
think his
dad.
brother.
Oh,
Yeah.
I never put that together. Okay,
Yeah.
they didn't really like. I mean, other than
He
him
tells the story on stage
Yeah.
about
my dad's a tough guy who likes to kill deer.
Yeah.
And, you know, all
yeah,
this
because
stuff.
that's it, because he at first thinks that it's that's his dad.
Interesting. Okay,
Yeah.
well, that puts
You're
a
right.
different
It's not.
twist.
It isn't
It's an old
totally
white guy
obvious.
with gray
I guess,
hair.
but- yeah.
No, they don't, well, and they don't. Yeah, they don't point it out. Like, oh, I have someone in the audience. I just assume it was the guy who came to prove him wrong. Like, see, whatever you're doing at night,
Right.
I hope you like it because
Yeah.
that's what you're going to keep doing, or something like that. So, but it was interesting to see him bomb though, like the first time, because he's been so just boom, boom, like just killing it the whole time.
Yeah.
Really good, really funny. There's a Korean accent that is
aged a little poorly.
a little cringy.
Although I do think that the premise of the joke is really funny, that the guy driving the bus has never been to New York before. Like, I think that's really good, but yeah, the Korean accent could go for sure. But yeah, I mean, and you know, he's doing a really good, like, he obviously has worked out this craft of being able to get up and do this thing.
But when he's happiest is when he's watching Sally Field be really good.
Yeah.
And
Oh yeah.
what he taught her. That's why it kind of bummed me out that they tried to go the sexual route to some degree, because it would have been a better movie if they just would have like ignored that trope of
Yeah.
the 80s. But that's just my personal experience. I understand, like, you think it gives it 6 and that's who he is, but like when you watch him watching her killing for just like riffing with the crowd, that's his proudest moment. And even at the end when she wins,
Yeah.
like, you almost think he's just going to give it up or not even go up there at all.
Yeah.
Or like, you know, because she kills it. Like that's
Yeah.
one of the best moments.
Yeah, she
too.
does so good. Well, and I love that look on his face when Romeo says, "You did win,"
Mm-hmm.
and she's like, "That's great," and then starts walking out, and she's off camera, and he's like, "Do you want to work here again?" And she goes, "Yeah, I do." As she leaves, I was like, "Fuck, that's such a good line."
Yeah, it was.
But you're focusing on Tom Hanks' face, and he's so impressed. And I think, again, it goes to this idea why I think that it's okay that there was this clumsy, ill-fitted sexual attempt in there too, is that taught him for the very first time of like, oh, that's what it looks like to actually like care,
Take what you want.
and take what you want, and not try to climb up over other people, right? And that what she wants is her husband and her family, and she doesn't want stardom or any of this other shit. She got the card from her husband that said, "You won." you know, like the jury's in, you won.
Yeah, it's great.
And that he's like that when he saw that, it's like it taught him something. And I think that like that's why I like that arc in that way. One of my favorite detail moments.
Sorry, just to add
yeah,
on
yeah,
to
yeah.
that, but like it kind of, you kind of see him remember why he loves doing this in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's an emotion that he kind of forgot about too, because all he could think about was bills or getting laid or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And not about the jokes and making people laugh, because like she says, she's like, once you get a whole room of people laughing, it's, you know, it's infectious.
Yeah, and you did that.
It makes you feel so good.
Yeah. And the detail I love, going back to when you were talking about that they go to the other nightclub and that she can't use any of her jokes, and she does, you know, she's doing the crowd work and she gets the sex toy from the bachelorette party, and she tells the joke of like, I don't think I could, you know, she riffs off the top of her head, I don't think I could be intimate with something that has a 90-day warranty. And then later when she's doing the act in front of the judges, she says, I don't think I could be intimate with something that says Panasonic on it. And you go, she worked on the joke.
Better joke.
I fucking loved that. I loved that amount of detail of just like, she worked the joke out in her head, right? Like that kind of like little attention to detail, I think is again really unique to this movie, even in this festival that we did about stand-up movies.
Yeah, no, it's true. It is. And you show people working jokes out, and you kind of see jokes evolve. But you're right. It's that joke in particular there's just like this slight reference of like, oh, she kind of told a similar joke earlier.
Yeah.
That's just a better version of it.
Yeah, she grabbed it because she knew it was funny and it
Although
got a laugh.
both are funny.
Both are funny, but it's just like she altered it just enough. And yeah, I think that real kind of the science of it is really interesting.
That's what I
to see.
meant by the day-to-day of everything. Like, it was fun to kind of see that part of it in a more kind of, I would say this is a pretty produced movie, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's not like some low-budget movie of pretty big stars. So, like, again, why haven't I seen this
I know,
movie?
it's weird, right?
I love when she gets a bad haircut.
Oh my God.
That's a great scene.
And it's the most messed up haircut. And it's such a good scene with John Goodman. Like, let's see what we're really working with here. That whole sequence is so.
But like, they all just, that's, when she, I think, really realizes that family is more important.
Yeah, because at that point, even though she's not interested in Stephen romantically, it is an affair of sorts that she's having, right? She's lying to her husband about who's on the phone, and he's trying to figure out like what the fuck is going on with her, and it's so, and at the same time, Stephen, that moment when Stephen sees her coming in with him when he's outside with the bullhorn, and John Goodman's character, who I think his name is John. John doesn't know who Stephen is, but Stephen knows exactly who John is. And Stephen thinks of him as this monster, this ogre, and you just go, it's so interesting the way that we get all cramped up in this of he's like, you should leave your husband and leave your family and come go on the road with me. And she's like, you're a fucking child. Like, you have no idea what you're doing. I just think that dichotomy is really, really interesting. In that, like, no, she doesn't want to have that affair. She just wants to be funny, right? She just wants to know how to do it.
She just wants your help, man.
Yeah, she just wants your help. Yeah.
Last thing I'll say is I love when we stay down in the basement with all of the comics as everyone else is on stage, and just see them kind of toiling, because it could be a huge break for one of them, right?
Yep.
Any one of them, and they all think they know who it is or whatever, but like staying down there rather than being up and watching the whole show, I thought was a lot more effective.
Yeah, totally. Especially in that ending when the judges are figuring things out and it's just silent and everybody's down there. They're like, movies don't do that a lot, right? Where they just sit in a moment like that. Again, for somebody who you're like, you directed Bird on a Wire? Like, this movie's directed really well. Like the onstage stuff and the way that it feels very natural. And it feels like we get these little montages, but they don't even feel like montages. They feel very classical, right? Because we have that real kind of vaudevillian style trombone playing. It just feels very almost old Woody Allen-ish. It feels very classic in that way.
Sure.
And it works really well.
No, it was an entertaining and fun movie. I thought I can agree with a little bit of the criticism that it doesn't quite know what it wants to be a little bit, but it's still charming, still fun, and really glad. Again, a forgotten gem.
Yeah,
I mean, that's the whole point of this segment, right? Is the movies that like, oh, you remember this movie? Like, I forgot about that.
The comedicness of it lands to me the way that something like World According to Garp does.
Sure.
Where it is sometimes like tragically sad and in other moments really funny, and you don't know. At the end of it, you're just kind of like, wow, that was I got taken on a ride. So I'm so glad that we got a chance to talk about it. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, that ends out the Stand Up Film Festival. That was a super fun one. Probably gonna have to say Lenny is my favorite. King of Comedy was outstanding, but man, Lenny took me to another level.
Same.
Please watch that one if you haven't. Please like and subscribe. You can follow us on Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok. Those are our most active channels. Next week we're going to do that one scene from Blade Runner, Tears in the Rain.
That's right.
And after that, we're going to start a new festival. I don't think we've established that yet, but we'll figure it out.
Yep.
But please like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you soon.
Bye, you guys.